Welcome then to another big match build-up show, and it wasn't, of course, a desired beginning for Saints in the Premier League last weekend with a defeat at Burnley, but newsflash, Saints always start slowly, so nothing really new there. But it is time then to put Burnley to bed as Saints return to St Mary's then this Saturday afternoon, and it doesn't get much easier with the visit of Liverpool. So coming up then on this week's show, we suggest some ideas how to break up Liverpool this weekend, and perhaps how Saints can send some shockwaves to the rest of the division. And as for the opposition, I catch up with the Redmen TV after a fast start to the Premier League. It's plenty to ponder this week with a Super Cup selection dilemma.
What Ralph needs to do is actually get up the videos from last season's game, look at where we actually press Liverpool and where we cause them problems. I mean, you wonder if he might bring in Shane Long for this game, because he was so effective against Liverpool last season.
But our difficulty comes in, you don't normally play Wednesday, Saturday, and we've got you at 3 o'clock on the Saturday. If we're all in on the Super Cup, does that mean that we're going to have a little bit of a poorer performance against you guys, when really the Premier League has to take priority, although Super Cup is silverware?
And as per usual then, this episode is available to download if you're clicking the card above my head, if you're watching on YouTube, or available on most good audio platforms below the show. And of course, do let us know your predictions and suggestions on how Saints could defy the odds this Saturday. Tell me in the comments on YouTube, or get in touch on the social pages. But join us now then for our Southampton versus Liverpool big match build-up show. So welcome along then to this first half of this big match build-up show. Back in business, back to our regular sort of procedure now then, into the routine of things. But joining me on the line for his first appearance of the season, John, Saints SC podcast. How was your summer? And just tell me what you said to me just before we came on air.
Well, my summer's been great. And what I told you just before we came on air is that basically since about 5 o'clock on Saturday, I've been pretending that the football season hasn't actually restarted. We're still in the midst of the summer and, you know, the wonderful Tour de France that happened this year. I mean, all the pundits have been saying it was the best one for about 30 years. I mean, I've only been following the Tour probably for about the last 10 years or so. But it was amazing. It was so close and so exciting. And yeah, Saturday was just so depressing. Oh. I couldn't believe it. I just wasn't expecting us to lose 3-0 away to Burnley. Terrible.
We must talk about it, though. We must talk about the game before and the game ahead. But yeah, as you say, 3-0 Burnley. We rarely win on opening days as it is anyway, the worst possible start.
I don't know. Can you remember like when it was, I think maybe it was like late 90s or early noughties, Saints won all of their pre-season games. Well, they didn't lose in pre-season and everyone was like really excited. Oh, we're in great shape. And then I think we went off and then lost like the first kind of like 4 games of the Premier League season. So I was a little bit anxious about that, knowing that history and remembering the last time I felt that sort of level of excitement going into the season. But I don't know, it's felt different this summer. Like I've been really excited about Ralph Hasenhüttl. You read the articles about him that have been in the papers. He's talking about the way he's drilling his players. He's talking about the tactics. It's all really well thought through. And I don't know. I thought this season we would hit the ground running. I mean, I know Burnley's a terrible place to go and play, and normally this fixture doesn't really have any goals in it at all. But you know, I thought we'd do okay against Burnley. Maybe we'd come away with a point. I certainly didn't expect us to not score at all.
Well, the par would have been a draw, wouldn't it? Or would have taken a point, especially, like you say, Burnley's always a tough place to go. But of all that pre-match positivity that we spoke about on our shows and everybody else's previews, quite simply dampened by, and quite literally by the end of the afternoon, everybody saturated from head to toe, a miserable day all round up the M6 and back again.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, great respect to the travelling fans who made the effort to get up there. It looked pretty windy as well from where I was sat, watching the game through the safety of the television screen and in the warmth of my own home. Yeah, I mean, huge respect. I mean, it was nearly 2,000 supporters we took. You could hear the supporters as well, even when things were going badly. So I think that's always impressive. Yeah, I think lots and lots of people were really excited about the season heading up to Turf Moor because expecting something exciting to happen. And it nearly happened, you know. I went on to someone's Fantasy Premier League podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about how, you know, if you get Che Adams in your fantasy team, he's going to score the first goal of the Premier League season. He's going to be off the mark within 2 minutes.
Almost did it.
That close, Freddie. He was that close. And then maybe that was the turning point, you know. The moment where the bubbles started to burst, it was the first little fracture, you know, because those have been going in for Che Adams all pre-season, and then this one just went the wrong side of the post. If you look back at the game, and if you look at it with the cold light of day, and you try and take away the emotion, for the first probably 60 minutes of the game, we were okay. We were playing like a Saints team that was going to get a hard-earned draw at Burnley, or, you know, at least at worst was going to lose 1-0, but might have a chance of winning 1-0, you know.
And then after 60 minutes, it all started to fall apart. Burnley played the long ball game, didn't they? And I saw a statistic, and actually they played more long balls than anybody else in the entire division that weekend, and played to their strengths, really, because they've obviously done their research and probably read the articles on various newspapers and understood Ralph's playing style. So Ralph wanted to get it on the deck. Difficult to do so in the conditions, in the wet, in the wind, the rain, etc. But we were undone by 3 defensive errors ultimately by the end of the day. And the frailties to long balls, I mean, it was like I said in my match review, it was a comedy of errors. The tallest man on the pitch, 6'7", tallest man in the Premier League, unable to deal and misjudges the flight of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, well, that first goal was all about the wind, wasn't it? It was just terrible, terrible judgment from Vestergaard. But, you know, the interesting thing about that lineup is, like, he didn't go for the 4-2-2-2. He went for the 3 at the back. You know, when you do that, you're giving yourself that kind of backup plan for when your defenders make an error. So, you know, if Vestergaard misjudges a long ball because the wind catches it and takes it a little bit further than where he thinks, then that's where you're expecting either Bednarek or Jack Stevens to jump in and try and sort that out. But, you know, that didn't happen for the first goal. And whatever, I mean, you can say really poor judgment, you can say a bit of bad luck with the wind or whatever. But the second goal was that was the one that upset me the most. The way that cross came in. And if Ashley Barnes hadn't smashed it in, there was another Burnley attacker just behind him waiting to do the same. All completely unmarked.
I mean, it could have easily actually got on the end of Chris Wood, who was in front of Ashley Barnes.
I mean, it was insane, wasn't it? When you look at the replay and you just watch the way that kind of like Vestergaard looks across to Bertrand, he kind of looks back, kind of bemused at Bednarek, and it was just really calamitous. And then what I think the most worrying thing that we can take from this game is actually how quickly the collapse happened. 12 minutes, you know. If you look at last season, the problem that we had was kind of when we concede, our heads go, we lose all confidence, we lose all of our, I don't know, like we just, when we lose our heads, we lose it absolutely spectacularly. And we did that in really spectacular style again against Burnley. And, you know, fine, you go 1-0 down, don't lose your head. If you kind of keep focusing on what you're doing, there's still a chance that you can get something from the game. You can either get a point, you might even be able to get all 3 points. But the way we kind of mentally implode, as soon as something starts going wrong, as soon as there's like a little chink in the game plan, it's like game over for Saints. And I was really hoping that, as well as like looking at the tactical drilling, that Ralph would have been looking at the kind of mental fragility of Saints over the summer. But that mental fragility is still clearly there in a big way.
Still a lot to work on. And in fact, I think the first team needs to look at the under-23s this week, who came from 3-1 down at Man City away from home to go on to win 4-3. So certainly lessons to be learnt there. Hopefully Ralph has relayed the replays to the first team, and hopefully they can take some spirit into the weekends. And I think ultimately what it is a lack of leader. But do you think it'd be too soon to drop Danso in the deep end against Liverpool at the weekend? Because he's obviously our saviour, isn't he? He's gonna lead that back line. He's got that star quality to kind of excel us further up the table.
Well, I mean, you certainly hope so, don't you? I mean, I don't know, Freddie. To be honest, like I've never seen Danso play before. I'm not, I'm not a big follower of Augsburg, so I can't say I've watched him go through 90 minutes before. I'm interested to see how he does. I wonder if actually what we need in the back line is a sensible head. Angus Gunn's pretty young. Jan Bednarek's really young. Vestergaard, okay, I mean, I don't know what his excuse is, but he should be a little bit more mature, but perhaps he's not. Jack Stevens, we know, is kind of error prone. We know he's going through a bit of a tough time in terms of like the way the supporters perhaps call him out on Twitter. Bertrand, despite being a sage old head, he's not in the back line enough for him to be the organiser of that. So, I mean, I actually wonder if the best person we can bring in for Liverpool is actually Maya Yoshida. Just have someone in there who's a bit sensible, who can tell players to calm down, when it all starts going wrong. Because let's face it, against Liverpool, there will be a moment when we will be absolutely under the cosh, and it will be wave after wave after wave of Liverpool attacks. And if we're going to survive that and have any chance of coming out of this game with anything at all, even our credibility intact, we're going to need someone who has got a sensible head and can calm the players down when those waves of attacks come.
And indeed, Liverpool do come to St Mary's, of course, on the back of their Champions League win and that 4-0 victory on the opening day of the season, which saw themselves 4-0 up after 45 minutes.
Yeah. It could be fairly brutal, couldn't it? Well, I mean, I'll tell you what. So this weekend, my wife and I, we went away to the seaside together, and my sister looked after my son. So my son was wearing his Southampton shirt, and he was playing against my brother-in-law, who's a Liverpool fan, in the garden. My son's 4 years old, and he beat my brother-in-law, who's 28, 15-9. So, if that's anything to go by, it could be a good omen, Freddie.
Well, we'll take that certainly all day long, Liverpool, though, they'll pose a different threat, though, won't they? Obviously, Burnley playing to the strengths of the wind and the rain and the conditions, playing their long balls at home. But Jurgen Klopp likes to get the ball on the deck, play the ball around, play that possession. There won't be so many long balls, certainly at least, but obviously their front three, devastating. How can we stifle their front three?
I think what we have to do is look at the game at St Mary's last season. So, despite the fact we lost 3-1, for those of us that were there that day, you could see that we were right in the game until pretty much the 80th minute when Liverpool got their second goal. And then, the 3-1 scoreline probably wasn't fair. I mean, Virgil van Dijk came this close to scoring the most beautiful own goal, would have probably been in the history of Southampton Football Club. And we had them under pressure. So what Ralph needs to do is actually get up the videos from last season's game, look at where we actually press Liverpool and where we cause them problems. I mean, you wonder if he might bring in Shane Long for this game, because he was so effective against Liverpool last season. I suppose, this is the thing, that Southampton playing against Liverpool, our pressing style is better suited against a team with an attacking mindset that likes to play the ball around, play on the floor. And with Shane Long's kind of devastating pace and his just like unwavering energy levels, that's what caused them problems last time. Liverpool will always try and play it out from the back. So we have to be there with the high press. Obviously, if the high press doesn't work, then we leave ourselves a little bit stranded up the pitch with that devastating front three coming towards us. The good news is that Salah, Mane, Firmino have all had quite busy summers. So they might be a little bit more tired than perhaps they would have been at other times of the season. But I don't know, they looked pretty effective against Norwich, didn't they? But Norwich did cause Liverpool some defensive problems. Norwich scored a goal, they had some good chances. So we need to take some heart from that, and we just need to somehow hope that we can keep things tight enough at the back and not concede too many goals too quickly. Maybe
Liverpool took the foot off the gas in that second half to allow Norwich in, but they've also got the matter of the UEFA Super Cup in between now and then, so maybe they'll have some sort of fatigue heading into the weekend. But give us a score prediction then, John. What are you thinking We stayed in the game for 80 minutes last time we played them under the Friday night lights. I'm absolutely gobsmacked this hasn't moved for TV coverage.
Yeah. Oh, Freddie, I mean, I hate predicting Saints losses, but the thing with Liverpool and Man City is their arms race to be the best team in the Premier League has led to both of those teams reaching a level that is not even replicated anywhere else in the kind of top six teams. Even you look at all the money that Manchester United have spent over the last kind of few years, and they are nowhere near the level of Liverpool and Manchester City. I fancy Saints to, be able to give anyone a decent challenge at any level in the Premier League. But Liverpool and Man City, I think, are the two teams that not only Saints have to be on the absolute top of their game, and they need a good bit of luck, and they need the opposition to be faltering. And I just can't see all three of those things happening at St Mary's on Saturday. So I'm afraid I think I'm going to go for exactly the same score as last season. I think 3-1 to Liverpool. I think we'll get off the mark. I think we'll do pretty well. But ultimately, the tide of those Liverpool strikers, wave after wave of attack, I don't think we're ready for them yet.
All right, well, there you have it then. John, Saints FC podcast as well, back in business this season. Just remind everybody where we can catch up with you, and something different as well coming this season too, right?
Yeah, so we've been playing around with some new kit. So my wife, who runs the EdTech podcast, which is a great podcast if you're interested in teaching and tech and education, she's a professional podcaster. She's bought this great little desk which allows us to now take a live feed straight off the desk and broadcast that over YouTube. So we did a little bit of an experiment with our first one with a season preview on Thursday last week. It didn't go 100% to plan. We had a pretty awful echo for the first 20 minutes of the podcast as we're broadcasting over YouTube. But I've worked out what the issue there was. So hopefully for the rest of the season, you'll actually be able to hear myself, Tom, Parker, and any other friends or ex-players or other fans on the show, and you'll be able to hear us recording the podcast live. So it adds a little bit of extra jeopardy for us because we can't completely mess it up and then just deal with it in the edit. We're going to try and get things right first time. And you and I, Freddie, we're going to have a little chat and see if we can get it broadcast over the Ugly Inside YouTube channel, so you don't have to find another Saints channel to subscribe to.
Absolutely, and of course, a lot of the archive is available in the playlists on our channel as well. So good to speak to John, and hopefully everybody will tune in later this week for your live show.
Great, cheers, Freddie.
Great stuff there from John off the Saints FC podcast, and the latest episode is available to download on most audio platforms and available to stream from our YouTube playlist. So do make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. And as John mentioned then, we're giving a live show a go next week, so do stay tuned for that one. Some news then to tell you about before we head to the second half, and some news around St Mary's this weekend. The club have officially unveiled the fan zone, which will be in the South Car Park for Saturday afternoon and right opposite the mega store, offering a family-friendly and an alternative to match day. And whilst we're on the subject, then our friends at the Southampton Disabled Supporters Association are also hosting their annual free event on Tuesday, the 20th of August from 12 noon until 5 p.m. It's a free event where you can meet Laurie McMenemy, Franny Benali, host of the other legendary Saints players that played in the 76 Cup final. There's raffles to win some great prizes, inflatable castles, face painters, caricatures, and a whole load more. It's still the half-term holidays. The schools are still off. So if you're looking for something to entertain the kids on a free event, then I'd suggest you get down to the Chapel Concourse on Tuesday afternoon. Make the most of whatever is left of this British summer. But for more information, head to saintsdsa.org.uk or just search them on Facebook, Saints DSA, for more information. Just a little reminder then, we're also on the radio this season from 10 till 12 on Saturday mornings, trying to get you in the mood for match day. We're on 103.9 Voice FM. You can listen to us on the FM radio waves in the Southampton and surrounding areas. You can listen to us on digital radio Radio, online and on the TuneIn Radio app all across the world. So I think I've spoken far too much in this break. It's time now then to speak to our opposition. And what will it be from the Reds this weekend? So welcome along then to this second half of our big match build-up show. Joining us on the line from Liverpool, Chris from the Redmen TV. Good to see you again. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Thank you. I'm good. Of course, I'm good. We're champions of Europe.
Wow. We're not going to mention that at all because we don't want to talk about it.
I think I can get it in at least another 3 times in the next minute and a half.
Well, let's start at the beginning of this season. And this just before Norwich then, obviously, your pre-season wasn't the greatest by all means. You know, a couple of defeats, really sort of a few kids playing out on most of the teams over in your sort of tours across the world.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I mean, it was a very disrupted pre-season, really. I think, you know, obviously we started well against Tranmere and Bradford, go out to America. We don't have the full first team squad available because Salah's been playing in the AFCON along with Mane. Bobby Firmino has been playing in the Copa America along with Alisson. So we had those 4 players missing for the most part. But equally, we were a little bit leggy at times and the games were quite close together and there was a lot of travelling and you could... Yeah, it was poor, to be honest, and it wasn't an enjoyable pre-season to go to nearly every game. It wasn't until the Community Shield, really, against Manchester City where we really saw the real Liverpool. Now, obviously, we lost the game, but we gave them a great run for the money in that one, and obviously it ended up as a draw. And then against Norwich, you know, it looked like pre-season didn't happen. We just started. We were 4 goals up in the first half and we were like, well, okay, nothing to worry about here. Liverpool is still boss. We still got boss players and you still know exactly how Jurgen Klopp wants them to play. We took a step back second half. You know, I think we had one eye on the Super Cup and another eye on Southampton, and you know we probably lost track of Norwich a little bit. But the game was done, and you know, as angry as Virgil van Dijk was to concede, it wasn't the end of the world.
Well, I think I remember watching one of your videos recently after, or even your reaction on the build-up show recently. You said the Community Shield was effectively a friendly.
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? I mean, you know, it's one of them where if you win it, you go, brilliant, silverware. And if you lose it, you go, that's just a friendly. Nothing to worry about. But one of the interesting things that Jurgen Klopp did was he made the Liverpool team watch Man City lift the trophy, lift the shield up. And they were all stood on the edge of the pitch. I don't know whether this was transmitted on the telly or not because I was obviously there. But, you know, those Liverpool players didn't look happy to be stood there watching Manchester City. And I think that was Klopp going, that's what you need to be aiming for. You want those sort of feelings and you don't want them to be lifting trophies. So I think Liverpool will take the Super Cup particularly seriously. I think obviously it's Chelsea as well. It's another big English team. But, you know, we go into the Super Cup game having 5 days break. You know, we played Friday to Wednesday. Chelsea play a game against Manchester United on Sunday for Wednesday. But our difficulty comes in. You don't normally play Wednesday, Saturday. And we've got you at 3 o'clock on the Saturday. If we're all in on the Super Cup, does that mean that we're going to have a little bit of a poorer performance against you guys when really the Premier League has to take priority, although Super Cup is silverware? I just feel like we're going to be in a 38-game title race and you can't lose ground after 2 to Manchester City, unfortunately.
Well, we'd certainly hope that the boys do have a bit of fatigue in their legs from Wednesday. But as you mentioned just a minute ago, you know, you sort of quickly put your pre-season to bed, quickly put the Community Shield to bed. Within 45 minutes, find yourself 4-0 at half-time. And as you mentioned, you know, I think Klopp probably had a word with him at half-time and say, look, just relax a little and you look comfortable with your lead.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, I do a stats and tactics show every week and, you know, we had 9 shots in the second half compared to 6 in the first. So if you look at it like that, you know, we didn't really take our foot off the gas. But one of the things that we analyse is the recoveries and where Liverpool are recovering the ball. There was so many more recoveries in the opposition half in the first half. So I just feel like we just did, you know, calm it down a little bit. Obviously, the Alisson injuries probably affected us as well. We're thinking about that. We're maybe overthinking it a little bit defensively. But the midfielders, they're probably going to rotate, I guess, for the Super Cup and then for Southampton. I'd like to see, you know, you'd hope that we can put a strong side out in each game. And I think we've got the players that we can, but the front 3, I expect to see Mane in the Super Cup, which means he might not play him on Saturday. I don't know. If he doesn't play Mane in the Super Cup, I think he plays him against Southampton. That will tell you which one he's prioritising, I suppose.
And you've got, obviously, strength and depth. Origi sort of filling in for Mane, didn't he? Started on Friday night, setting up that sort of first goal and really become an influence on the game. So I guess a wild card for a lot of fantasy football managers as well. And a lot of headaches now, of course, for fantasy football managers. The game wasn't without incidents. Alisson goes off after taking a goal kick. What can you tell us about his injury? I've read various gossip columns. It's a lengthy spell out between 4 and 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've heard at the moment. Nothing's come out officially from the club since the 9th of August, the day of the game. And since then, all we've heard is 4 to 6 weeks. Karius might be coming back, which we're not too happy about. Those rumours seem to have started on Twitter. We've obviously brought Adrian in 4 days before the game against Norwich. He's going to probably be starting. We've got a young goalkeeper in Kelleher who's just coming back off a broken wrist. He's back in training. He's been back in training for about a week now. He'll probably end up on the bench. But, it's a big injury for us, is Alisson. He's one of the top goalkeepers in the world. And the reason I think that Liverpool took such a big step up last season was because of his safe pair of gloves in the net. So I think that we might. Not that, Alex, I don't know too much about it. I didn't watch him every week for West Ham. I'm not one of those lads who watches every game of football for every team. But what I did see out of him in the 60 minutes that I've watched in front of me this season was a lad who probably distributed the ball better than I thought. Didn't really get tested shot stopping wise, but did make 2 saves. Obviously conceded a great strike from Pukki. But yeah, it'll be an adjustment certainly to play with him there, because Alisson's so comfortable on the ball and understands which angle to pass it to and what player to pass it to, depending on how the opposition team are pressing.
And indeed, Adrian had a habit of being a good shot stopper, in fact, for West Ham over the last few years. And that, as I say, free transfer, really, and only sort of one of the late ones, really, wasn't he? Drafted in the transfer window. And of course, he'll be expected to start Wednesday and on to Saturday as well, I assume.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the case. I think he's our number one until Alisson comes back now. And, it's mad, isn't it, that Mignolet goes for first team football and then 4 days later or 5 days later, Alisson goes down with an injury. But Mignolet had too many the pass was just hanging over him too much. I mean, he's one of those players that, he's a good shot stopper as well, but the entire crowd did not like him. If you've had a goalkeeper that you don't like, Freddie, and the whole crowd, every time he gets the ball at his feet goes, and panic seems to set in. And it wasn't just the crowd, it was the players in front of him, like Lovren and Matip and Van Dijk. You could see they're all sort of on edge, and it's not a good thing. Whereas Adrian, he might not be as good as Mignolet, but still doesn't have that. He came in and he looked good, so hopefully we can put a good performance in against us.
And he is an experienced goalkeeper. I guess we had that with Fraser Forster a couple of years ago, and his confidence just absolutely plummeted. It swam like a stone, to be honest. And we've only recently seen him return to the first team action at the tail end of last season. But you mentioned there a minute ago, you might see some rotation. What sort of team do you think you might be able to expect to come out on Saturday, and considering who might be selected on Wednesday?
I think that one of Trent Alexander-Arnold might get a rest in the game against Southampton. Joe Gomez might come in, or that will happen in the Super Cup. I think he'll have a rest one of the 2 games, young Trent. I think the midfield, maybe 1 or 2 players changes from the midweek game. I guess that it would be Fabinho, Henderson and Milner. I think Wijnaldum will probably come back in. You might see someone like a Naby Keita come into the middle of the park as well. The front 3, if Mane plays midweek, I think Origi comes back in for use. Vice versa, if Origi starts midweek, I think Mane starts against you. So it's difficult to say with obviously another game in between, but whatever, it'll be a strong side. There's no taking Southampton. There are no mugs, we know that, and Huijsenhutl's got you playing well. So Liverpool need, as I mentioned before, need to keep the pressure on Manchester City every single week. We can't afford to put weekend side out against anybody, not in this competition.
And it was, I guess, just to wrap things up then, Chris, last season it was a 3-1 victory on the Friday night lights. We were well in the game for 80 minutes, but a couple of devastating counter-attacks. Salah kind of broke the duck, if you like, on the night. What are you expecting for Saturday? Give us a score prediction.
I think it'll be a difficult game, to be honest. I think maybe like a 2-1, something like that to Liverpool. I think that Wednesday, Saturday this early on in the season, when a lot of our main lads like Firmino, Salah, Mane haven't had loads of football already, I think that might be a tough ask. So I'm expecting to have a really difficult game against us, actually.
All right, well, there you have it. Chris, joining us from the Redmen TV. Just remind everybody, I guess, where we can find you. And you've also got lots of things happening this season, right?
Yeah, so obviously we're on the Redmen TV. If you like the cuts of our jib, though, me and Paul do a podcast over on Matex Pajak on YouTube, just one podcast a week, which we're really enjoying doing. But obviously the redmentv.com is where most of our footy stuff sits.
Great stuff. Good to speak to you. And we'll hopefully speak again soon, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Great to speak to Chris then from the Redmen TV this week, and a link to all of their channels are available in the description below. But that is about full time then for this week's build-up, and as always, do let me know your score predictions in the comments, and do let me know how and where you'll be following the game on Saturday afternoon. I do check back later on Saturday evening then for your fan reactions, but I'll leave you with a parting message. How can Saints send shockwaves this Saturday? Come on, you Saints.